Welcome back. So excited about digging into these 6 stages of grooming. Last week, as we introduced, again, the stages of grooming and the 365 days of grooming and manipulation that we are doing in this series, we talked about the first stage of grooming, which is where you basically this person targets their victim. Now, in my case, I was targeted basically at church in a place of trust. He saw me singing, and that was it. I was the next victim. And then he figured out all the vulnerabilities of my family members, and that's what he utilized to get to the second stage, which is gaining the victim's trust. So how did he do that? And just to be really clear, it's really important that you realize that that was my story of our vulnerability and how he, targeted me and my family. But someone else could also be targeted because they're vulnerable, because maybe, mom and dad aren't around much, or there's a single parent that is, working several jobs, or there might be a lack of just adult interaction, and that's a vulnerability. Maybe that young person or that child is left out. Maybe they're bullied a lot, or they're not included. And if somebody can notice that vulnerability, they can target that. Or there's low self-esteem. Maybe there's been, some other kind of neglect or abuse that, again, a very crafty master manipulator will use that vulnerability to do this, target them, and then to do this gaining trust. How do we gain the trust of the victim? So perpetrators are, very observant, right? They observe the child or the tween or the teenager. They find out all about his or her vulnerabilities to learn how best to approach them, how to interact with the child or the teen. The perpetrator isn't going to just go for the throat, so to speak, right away. Almost always, they play a longer game. Once in a while, if a young person is extremely vulnerable, it could escalate faster. But most of the time, the perpetrator is just figuring out that young person. They're figuring out what they like. Do they like music and acting like I did? Do they like sports? Do they want to engage in ball games and nobody's taking them to the little league thing? And that, kind, neighbor offers, you know what? I know that, you're single and you're working all the time. I'd be happy to, take this child over to the league that is in the community and get him or her involved in sports, because that's what they love. They're going to find a vulnerability and they're going to, exploit it with the parent and trying to fill, that little bit of trust with the parent. Oh, I can do something to help you. So might be that the child wants to go to horseback riding lessons. That was something that I had always wanted to learn, how to ride a horse. I'd been on a horse, but at my uncle's, my Uncle Keith had horses, and we'd sometimes go out there and get on a horse, but I didn't really know how to ride. And so this was one of the ways that accomplished him building trust. He would find ways to engage me, and sometimes my sisters, and sometimes his own children along with me. So it looked very, very benign, very, very much like, oh, I'm taking all the kids to this science fiction movie, and then we're going to go to the Tasty Treat, which was the little hamburger joint. And the tagline of the Tasty Treat was home of the space burger, because it was the space age. So there were these little Martians on top of these little saucer-looking sandwiches that were made into a round circle, and the edges were sealed, and inside was, ground beef and cheese and lettuce and stuff. And we all loved them. Now as adults, we're like, ooh, cooked lettuce, deep fried or whatever. But that's what he would do. He'd take us all So, give everybody, all the other parents a break. This is the kind of thing that he would do to build trust, not only with us and with the kids, and especially with me, but also for the parents who got, an afternoon off. Oh, the Pied Piper's here again. He's going to take everybody to get ice cream. Oh, I see. I see that Jan needs a summer job. That's the kind of thing he would do. She needs she's told me she wants to, work, earn some money. So why don't I could give her a job at the furniture store. Why don't I just let her dust the furniture a couple hours, 2 or 3 times a week? She can come down after school and just dust for me, and we'll move stuff around. And, she can even answer the phone, And of course, it made me feel all grown up, and I was earning like $1.50 an hour, something like that. And it didn't look like anything other than a helpful Henry who was going to later do the most heinous things. But that's not how it looked. He didn't look like that guy. So I think that when it comes to gaining trust, and after you've really targeted the victim and you have seen the vulnerabilities that they have, and you've now figured out what their interests are, you're going to be able to pretty much figure out a way in over and over and over again. So, if somebody gives your child a special gift out of the blue, you would be maybe wary. You would be like, what? What are you doing? Blah, 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 But when they've built this relationship of trust with you and your family, and then, 2 years later, they're like, I have this scratch and dent hope chest, because everybody used to get a hope chest around age, well, in my family, that was a thing where you would put all the stuff that someday when you were a mom, and he said, I have this one that got a little scratch on the backside of it. I can't sell it at the store. I want to give that hope chest to Jan. And I've got some other furniture pieces that I can give to Karen and Susan for Christmas. And I'm just gonna do it. And my dad, to his credit, this is a couple years into this relationship, he's like, no, you can't do that. That's too big. That's too much of a gift. No, we'll pay for it. We'll pay for it. He's like, no, I seriously, I can't sell it. He goes, it cost me like $75, and now it's scratch and dent, it's worth like 10. He had a way to make sure that he could give the appropriate gifts at the appropriate time, where it was just a fight over who's going to pay the bill. So those are the sorts of things that when somebody is always going to, foot the bill, or at one point in that relationship, he was going to divide our bedroom, that great big gigantic bedroom that Karen and I shared downstairs, into 3 parts, or into 2 parts, I guess. And he's like, well, the girls, they're getting older, it's time. They want their own bedrooms. I certainly did at that time when I was turning, I think I was about 10, maybe going on 11. I wanted my own room, I thought. And Karen was heartbroken. She didn't want that. But, I was always in support of what B was trying to do in gaining my trust as I look back. But he did it in a way that, what kid doesn't want to go out for ice cream or go to the movies or go to the home of the Space Burger and get a Space Burger and a milkshake and go to the park, go to Ross Park, this big, beautiful park that's right next door. What? Nothing looks wrong with that picture. So another way that I think he built trust is that he was also a very good listener. So I would find myself telling him things about school and my, the one boy that I liked when I was in grade school. And this was kind of before the Bertholds moved in to our neighborhood. His name was Darren Ravston. He was kind of my boyfriend in 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade, I guess. I mean, I didn't know what a boyfriend was. I know that we used to lay on our bellies on the grass in front of his house. It was just a couple blocks away, again, in the neighborhood. And we would eat he told me that if you plucked the piece of grass, the white part that's under the dirt, if you wipe it off any dirt, if you eat the white part of the grass, that it would make your pee turn from yellow to white or clear. So we would eat the grass. I mean, this is just one of those memories that just sticks out in my mind because it's kind of funny. And then we'd go in the bathroom and we'd see if our pee was a different color. Oh, we haven't eaten enough of the white part of the grass. We better go eat some more of it because it's still kind of light yellow. And, this is the kind of stuff that first, second, third graders do. They don't, hopefully they're not sexualized by then. I mean, with all of our phones and the internet and everything, children are being sexualized and exposed to sexual things so early on TV. It just breaks my heart because I at least had those innocent years when I was, just 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, where I really just had friends in the neighborhood that I hung out with and did silly things like that. Well, a master manipulator will see those vulnerabilities. What if there had been somebody in that household that was manipulative and watching, these two their little boy and girl, go in the bathroom to check the color of their pee. I mean, what an opportunity. Talk about vulnerabilities, right? But these are just normal things that sometimes kids do crazy things like this, right? So he was a good listener and would listen to stories that I would tell him about, things at school or kids at school or what was happening in the next play that I was going to be in. And I was about ready to do play Oliver in Oliver, the musical. And I remember this is another way that he gained trust. This is why I'm telling this story. I went to the show. It had started, I think, or maybe it was opening night. I think it was opening night. And I'm the lead, I'm this 10, maybe 11-year-old. I was one of those ages. And I'm going to play Oliver in Oliver Twist with my short little shag haircut and, my cute little cap. And by this time, I mean, acting was like my passion. I loved it. I was good at it. I could cry on cue. I could sing Where is Love under the table, scared of the orphanage and the people that ran it, and kind of shaking and sing the song and make the audience cry and make myself cry. And so he, of course, noticed and said, oh, for sure, me and the whole family will be there on opening night. And when I showed up backstage at call time, there was a big bouquet of roses sitting on my little table, and it had a sweet little note that was, break a leg, we'll be watching, or I'll be watching you, something like that. I think I still have the card somewhere. I got to find it. Love, B, and family. So that's the card that, I thought they were from my dad. My dad owned the flower shop, right? My dad had no idea. And he was so mad. I just remember me coming, after I'd done the show and it was wonderful and I was great and all that. And he was a great supporter, which is another one of those ways to build trust, be a great supporter of how talented your kids are or how, gifted they are in sports or in dance or in whatever it is, their art projects or, just how smart they are. Oh, I play chess with them because, they're so smart. All those things, those are how groomers get the trust. So when my dad saw me with that big little, in a vase, of like 12 dozen, I think they were red roses as well. And of course, all I know is that people are watching and that they're all happy and that I'm, doing my thing and they loved it and they loved the show. And Dad didn't show this to me. This is a story that I found out, after many years later. But my dad said, I was so mad. I went to Bob, to B, and, after the fact, like the next day, and I just chewed him out. I said, that's my job because he was starting to be just a little too, he was in our lives a little too much. He and the family we didn't have time for all of our other friends. I even have a letter from Elaine Hoffman that she wrote that said, Bob and MaryAnn, you've been our closest friends since we've moved back here. And yet we never see you. You spend all your time with the Bertholds. Why, what's the deal? I have that letter too. I found that recently. I'd never seen it before. And she just kind of said, stop just playing favorites and come back to us. We want our friends back. And these are all things that I've found out about, of course, years and years later. But my dad chewed me out about those flowers. And he said, look, I have a flower shop and whatever I think is the appropriate thing to send to my daughter on opening night is what it's going to be. You overstepped. And of course, B just apologized up and down one side and the other. Oh, Bob, I'm so sorry. I just, and of course he didn't even get him from my dad's store. He got him from the other flower shop, the competing flower shop, Delart and Delart's Floral. And I just think back on all of these things, they were, for somebody out there that's got, they think I would notice, they're obviously, these are obvious things. They're not obvious when you've built the relationship of trust for a number of years by this point. So I think it's really important to just realize that it might sound like a huge red flag to you, but it doesn't feel like that when you're slowly in the process of being groomed. It's just a little bit every day, just a little bit here or there. And it's your parents or the people around the child and you as the child that you're gaining this great trust, this great affection, this great, love for this person that doesn't look at all like something inappropriate. They promise things to you. That's another tactic they use. Like, he would often say when he would see me in a play, oh my word, you should be in the movies. I know one person in Hollywood that I think if we could take you down there and you could do do one of those scenes that you just did in Oliver for that person, they would sign you up and put you in the movies. That's the kind of stuff he would say. Maybe not in front of my parents all the time, but when he had that moment alone in the lobby where we're greeting all the people that were in the audience. Those are the kinds of times where there's all kinds of distractions because mom and dad and my sisters, Karen, Susan, Caroline, all the people that came to see me in the play, they're talking to other friends that are in the audience and, communicating. He has an opportunity to just slide a real compliment in there or to make a promise about something that would make me feel like, oh my gosh, he thinks I'm so good. And he knows somebody that could help me get into the movies. These are the kinds of things that gain trust. And a lot of times it's basically to give more trust to this person. And not that you don't trust your own parents, but they're feeding you this constant, diet of sugar-coated, for me, it would be dark chocolate covered almonds, my favorite candy. That's what they're feeding you in these compliments, in the way that they gain your trust. And sometimes they break the rules that are, in your home even, but you don't care because it's like candy before dinner, before you get your steak dinner or your baked potato or, mom's delicious casserole, they're going to feed you the sugar, the candy. And, they're gonna sit, with you and, watch an R-rated movie or something that is inappropriate, but you're on your own. You might be at their house and he might have that movie on, and then you're exposed to some sort of sexual, content. And then he might hurry and turn it off. This happened one time too. He hurries and turns off the movie. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean for you to see that. Well, he'd probably queued it up. And I was a little bit shocked. I just remember, and nobody else was around. Everybody else was in a different part of the house. And it was at his house. But again, we definitely did not grow up watching any rated R movies that had anything to do with sex, nor did we say the words. So secrecy starts. When they do something like that and all of a sudden it's a secret, like don't tell your mom and dad. I let you, or at least I exposed you to this movie. I didn't mean to. That would be him. But maybe somebody else would be more like, I let you watch this movie, or I let you have the candy, or whatever, So one of the promises that he made was to go see this professional musical at, a theater, professional company of No Nanette. And, it's just so interesting that he wanted to make that a part of the vacation, with his whole family. And there was only room for one more person in the car. I mean, that would make, little Jill actually stayed with mom and dad. They took care of her. She was just, maybe 2 or 3, maybe 3 going on 4 at this point. And so he had made this whole plan to go up to Seattle where there was this professional production and we could go to the Space Needle and all these things that he had planned. And then my dad, after that Oliver experience, which I think with the flowers, I think he started to go, this guy is just too involved. And my dad said, no, she can't go on that trip. Oh my gosh, I threw a fit. And he canceled the trip. I'm not going to take anybody on the trip. We're not going to go at all. If Jan can't go, I already got the tickets and blah, blah, blah. And anyway, he wore my dad down and Gail came over and talked to my dad, please let Jan go so that we can go on this trip. We've had it planned for weeks and months. The boys are so disappointed. Everybody's crying. Well, eventually my dad just said, oh, all right, but stop buying tickets and planning these things. It's just too much. And that's when dad started to pull back. So he started to sense something in his gut that was just too much. We need to get back to our friends, our family, we got to just stop being bombarded all the time with, B and the Bertholds. And anyway, but I did get to go to Seattle and, all the other things that he did, the horseback riding, sleep outs on the trampoline, anything that would build trust where the other kids were around, or I got to do something that I wanted to learn or do. All of those things, that was so important to me, and going to see that professional play because, I wanted to go to Broadway one day. And I made it as far as Florida and working at Disney World, but then my little Austin was born and I never made it to New York. I'd still like to go there one day and be in a show. But that was my gift. My gift was the singing and the acting, and those were the things that made me feel great about myself. So of course he's going to exploit those things. Another thing that he would exploit in the gift department of gaining trust was a big gift basket. This was really early on, like right after we'd kind of done our first combined family activity, and we'd gone over to their house and we had a picnic on the living room floor. And anyway, what happened is after that whole event, he actually sent a gift basket to our house, and it was delivered. It was full of fruit and a nice card and note, and it really impressed my dad. And he knew that it would impress my dad, that it would build a sense of trust with my dad, because my dad is in the gifts and floral business. That's what the flower shop was called, Atkins Flower and Gift Shop. And so the thing that my dad does every day, making beautiful flower arrangements for people or gifts, putting gift baskets from the gifts in his store into a beautiful, cellophaned with a beautiful bow on it. That's what my dad does every day. So for someone to do that for him, or at least it felt like that, was really impressive, and it really made him feel good. And the note on it basically said, you have such a beautiful family, thanks for spending time with us, or we're anxious to become better friends, something like that. So those are the ways that people can build trust. I guess that's a good stopping point on this particular stage of grooming. I hope that it's helpful. Please continue to share your stories. recognizing the signs of grooming is such an important piece in preventing and hopefully bringing awareness to childhood sexual abuse. I just can't overstate it enough. Parents, neighbors, church leaders, teachers, anyone out there who is in the lives of children, you can make a difference in one or even many children's lives if you will notice and trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. So if you are concerned at all, please speak up. If something does not seem right, please speak up. Together we can end childhood sexual abuse if we know what to look for. Everyone here at the Jan Broberg Show and at our foundation, we believe people. We hear and support all survivors. So if you would like to share your story of grooming or manipulation, please contact my team at jan@janbroberg.org. And your story will remain anonymous and will be shared as part of our 365 days of grooming and manipulation. Thank you so much for listening.